Hello and welcome back to Magnus Carlsen Chess 2 Grand Final, as each player is winning 2 sets each so far with some awesome performances from both the players. Now let's have a look at set 5, where all the 4 rapid games ending up in draw, with both the players showing some good tactical skills in the games and displaying wonderful chess. So let's have a look into the first Blitz game from set 5. So playing with the white pieces, Hikaru goes for e4 and knight to f6 replies Carlsen with the Alakine defense game on board. So e5 and knight to d5, now d4 and d6 and c4 attacking the knight. So knight goes to b6, now f4. We are now having a 4 pawns attack game on the board. So t takes e5 and f takes e5 and bishop to f5, now knight to c3 and e6 and knight to f3, continuing with the development of the pieces. Now bishop goes to b4 and bishop to e2 and c5, now a3 attacking the bishop. Now bishop takes the c3 knight and b into c3, now knight to c6, continuing with the development. Now both the players castles on the king side and bishop to e3, bringing the bishop into the game and at the same time attacking the c5 pawn. So now Carlsen counter attacks with knight to a5 attacking the c4 pawn. So knight to d2 comes in support of c4 pawn, and now bishop to g6, and after that queen to e1 controlling the h4 square, and now knight to a4 going after the c3 pawn. So knight to f3 in support, queen comes in support of the c3 pawn. So then knight to b2, again going after the c4 pawn. So now bishop to g5 attacking the queen, and queen goes to d7 and queen to h4. Hikaru trying to launch an attack on the king side. So c takes d4 and c takes d4 and knight b into c4. Here Carlsen wins a pawn, and now queen to g4 and queen to d5. Carlsen manages to bring his queen on the center. Rook a to e1 and rook a to c8. Here Carlsen get a semi open, and further he'll get a open a rook file. So h4, preparing for h5 pawn push. So h5 replies Carlsen attacking the queen. So now queen goes to queen goes to g3 and knight into a3. Here Carlsen wins a pawn. Now bishop to f6. Here Hikaru plays a wonderful move, a tactical move here. So the idea behind this move is, if Carlsen takes the bishop with g pawn, then e into f5 and queen goes to g5, and then queen h6 and queen g7 is checkmate. So after bishop to f6, Carlsen didn't take the bishop. So here Carlsen plays knight to c2 attacking the rook on e1, and at the same time attacking the d4 pawn. So in reply to knight to c2, Hikaru plays bishop to d3, targeting the g6 bishop. Carlsen wins a rook for a knight into e1 and a rook into e1, and now queen to d7 and d5, pushing the pawn in the center to launch an attack. So now rook to c3 attacking the bishop. Now rook comes in support of the bishop, rook to e3 and rook into d3. Here Carlsen gives back his rook for a bishop and a rook into d3 and e into d5. Now e6, Hikaru sacrificing his pieces to get an initiative. Now queen into e6 plays Carlsen and bishop to d4. Hikaru retreats his bishop to d4 and knight to c6 attacking the bishop. The position is better for Carlsen because of the pass pawns on a7 and b7. So after knight to c6, rook plays d2 and queen to g4. Here Carlsen is offering a trade of queens, which Hikaru declines with queen to f2 and bishop to e4 and knight to e5 attacking the queen. Now Carlsen takes the knight with knight into e5 and b into e5. Now rook to c8, preparing for rook to c1. Now king goes to h2 and f6 attacking the bishop. Now bishop goes to d4 and b6, d4 attacking the a7 pawn. So now b6 comes in support of a7 pawn and a rook to a2 going after the a7 pawn. Now rook to c2, here rook into c2 and bishop into c2. Now if Hikaru plays queen into c2, then queen into d4. So here Hikaru plays a bishop into f6 and win a pawn. Now g into f6 and queen into c2, and now queen to h4 check. So king to g1 and queen into e1 check. Now king to h2 and queen to e5 check. Now king to h1 and king to g7, bringing the king into the game. So queen to c6 with the idea of playing queen to b7 and win a pawn with a check. So now d4, Carlsen is not at all bothered about that. He's preparing for the pawn push. So after d4, queen to b7 as expected, b7 check and king goes to h6 and Hikaru wins a pawn. The position clearly favors Carlsen. Now d3, Carlsen continues with the pawn push and queen to d7 to stop the advancement of pawn. So now queen to e1 check and king to h2 and d2. Now queen to d8 going after the f6 pawn, and now queen to h4 check with supporting the pawn. Now king goes to g1 and queen to f4 and queen to h8 check. Now king goes to g5, king to g5, queen g8 check. Now king to h4 and queen to d5. Now queen e3 check and king to h2. Now queen e5 check. So here Hikaru plays g3 check. Now queen into g3 check and king h1 and queen e1 check, king to g2 and queen e2 check. So it was in this position on move 58 that Hikaru resigned the game, because here Carlsen completely dominated the position, and here Carlsen is going to win the game hereafter after queening the d2 pawn. So say after king to h1 or g1, this is check. Now queen into d1 and queen into d1. So after 4 draws in the rapid, Carlsen managed to win the first blitz. So let's see if we can win the next blitz game also. So hope you all enjoyed the game. Stay tuned for more action from the Magnus Carlsen Chess 2 finals, and thank you.